So this is Together We Build episode next one.
Boiled brains.
Boiled brains? What is that? Never mind.
Senseless and hot-headed. Luckily for us, it isn't an actual food.
Boiled brains. You have to roll your R to say.
I'm sure someone somewhere has eaten boiled brains.
Oh, of course
All
they
I can
have.
say is it's totally fake news.
I found the devil.
The devil?
I found him.
Really? Is this him
No.
in this wheelchair?
No, he's over here in this bucket. I kid you not. There he is. Mr. Sin!
Oh my
Not
goodness.
bothering us anymore.
And I remember her saying, okay, you're going to play Mr. Sin today. And she hands me this purple puppet with a nasty mustache. Pop the little puppet up, and literally on cue, 80 kids out there all, boo, no, yuck, I hate that guy. I was like, man, these guys are trained on cue. Like, I don't know if they got candy for doing that or what. But
oh, man, they just want to come down on
deep
someone.
theological teaching. Deep theological teaching.
Well.
Hey everyone, welcome to Together We Build. My name is Chris Behnke. I'll be hosting this episode, and I'm here with Prudence O'Hare.
Oh, no.
The supreme champion of the universe. And we're going to talk about some fun stuff. We're going to talk about homeschooling. We're going to talk about businesses, running them at home with homeschooled kids, and being an author,
I'll tell you right
writing
now,
books.
It's tough. We'll just cut to the chase.
End podcast. You know, that is, I've got the fake news button here. I'm not going to hit it because it is tough. So skip to the end. It's tough.
And that's it. That's all you guys need to know.
We have two that have graduated high school, and they did not flunk out, neither one of them. 5. Our son, 19-year-old son, is in the background whispering, it was close. So I'm not sure that that's a good sign. But anyway, before we get into all of that, I've got some trivia questions here, which are critically important. And you have, what have you got here?
This is just...
It's
a
the
real
Shakespearean
nice Christianese
insult
book.
generator. Shakespearean insult generator. If you've ever watched any of the Relentless Truth shows, you may know about the Shakespearean insult generator.
Yeah. So...
Well, lay one on us. Tell everyone, the millions of viewers, what is this? What have you got here?
All right. Well, it's got 3 different little books, so to speak, next to each other. And you just turn the pages and you line up your little insult generator.
So the insult will go bing, bing, bing.
Yeah, so then you read it in a row. And then on the backs, you get to read what they mean. Yeah, exactly. So
Excellent.
This was,
Excellent.
How old? What? I'm a Shakespeare. I'm showing some ignorance
She
here.
is a homeschool
When
teacher.
did
What's your
Shakespeare-
question?
When did he exist?
1400s, I think. Okay, now we're both showing our ignorance.
Yeah, we are. So we're going to figure that out for you.
Did
Because,
William
it's not like something we think about every
Shakespeare
day.
die?
I don't think about...
First trivia question, when did Shakespeare die?
1600s.
1616, that's what I
That is
said.
definitely not 1400s, Chris.
16. No, what I meant was it was 400 and some years ago, not 1400s.
Oh, sure.
Obviously.
Sure you did.
Clearly, he died April 23rd, 1616.
So he was actually
According to
from
the
the 1500s, right?
According to these Googlers,
Because that's when he died.
honestly, we weren't far off.
So, about 500 years ago, roughly.
Okay, what is the insult? Let's get to
All
the
right.
insult.
So I've picked apish, eye-offending, jackanape.
An apis?
So,
Wait. Apish?
Yeah.
Eye-offending, jackanape. Isn't this the definition over here?
no, it's on the backs of them. See, right here.
Got it.
So
Nailed
apish
it.
means foolish, resembling an ape.
That makes sense.
Eye-offending, difficult or painful to look
Yeah,
at.
totally dead on.
Jackanape, ape or monkey, conceited person. So we got like 2 in there that
are ape-like?
we actually saw an ape recently. He was huge.
A real ape. She's talking about a real ape, not someone
at
that's
the
apish.
Fort Worth Zoo.
Yes, in Dallas, the Fort Worth area. The Fort Worth Zoo. There was an ape. Let's just say this. I do not want to be in the jungle with that guy by myself.
I mean, he was pretty big.
He was scary.
And he, like, sat down in front of the window and just turned his backside to the window.
Yep.
As if he's like...
That's what he thought of us. That's what he thought of us. He definitely put us in his place, in our place. Okay, how about some trivia questions? Okay, now, the last time we did this, you, again, scored 100%. So far, every time we've ever done trivia, Prudence, you have scored 100%.
Chris,
Nice job.
that is absolutely not true.
Nice job.
And I appreciate if you would stop lying to the audience.
So, let's see if you can get this one. The space between your nostrils is called what?
What does it start with? What letter?
C, the letter C. The space between your nostrils is called what?
I don't know.
A columella.
I wouldn't have guessed
Obviously, it's a columella.
that. Even if you
All right.
gave me the next 4 letters, I wouldn't have guessed it.
Okay, here's a Bible one.
Okay.
What does the word matrix mean in the Bible? What does the word matrix mean in the Bible?
Matrix. Connection?
Womb. As in a mother's womb. Matrix.
It's kind of similar, I think.
It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. Okay. When people are frightened, their ears produce more
Earwax?
earwax. Nailed it. 5.
Well, that's
That's
like
weird.
all our ears
You're like,
produce.
and then you're like,
I mean, ear sweat.
That's very strange. I wonder why that is.
Ear sweat. Like, why is it called wax anyway? Is it really wax? Is it really melting from our
To
heads?
be really honest, I'm always honest, by the way. I don't actually know what wax is made out of.
Yeah. I don't either.
Now, there's candles that are made out of various different things. But, like, when someone says, I don't know.
Maybe candles are made out of ears.
I think a lot of
Maybe
things
candles
are made
have been developed
out
from
of a
earwax.
lot of different things, and they're called wax. Okay, last one. In Alaska, it is legal to shoot bears, but illegal to do what?
Illegal to do? Is it something?
It's legal to shoot
shoot
bears.
Is it something to do with bears?
It has nothing to do with bears. In Alaska, it's legal to shoot bears, but it is illegal to do what?
To
Come on now, you've got this, Prudence. Don't be an apish, eye-offending
if I had the Jeopardy
jackanape.
music, it would come faster. It's illegal to
What does that mean?
give a seal a snack.
It's illegal to give a seal a snack. Very good guess, but it's actually illegal to wake one up.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Yep, you can't wake somebody up. Okay, I said that was the last one. We're going to do one more.
Wouldn't our boys
one
love
more.
that if that was illegal in our state?
Yeah, illegal.
Don't tell them.
They'd roll over and they'd be like, you want me to call the cops?
I'm calling the police.
Leave me alone. All right, last one. If one is wearing a swimsuit in Florida in public, what is illegal for that person to do? Okay, so they're in Florida, in public, wearing a swimsuit. What can they not do?
Jump up and down.
Jump up and down. That would be a good answer, but the right answer is sing. You cannot sing wearing a swimsuit in Florida in public.
Who developed that?
I don't know. I'm not
That's
sure.
like as bad as it's like a 5-year-old thought up these rules.
I mean, I think 5-year-olds are smarter than that, but
Don't sing; it'll draw attention to you.
yeah, you got me. Prudence, you got me. I think the person that came up with it was an apish, eye-offending jackanape.
Probably a be slubbering. smeared slobbering.
I think some of those,
He's
just so you know,
slobbering.
some of those you need to be careful about.
I know. That's
Some
why
of
I'm
those you need to
reading
be
them first.
Careful about, like preview. All right, let's talk about some things. First of all,
Flat-beard.
in this one, we want to cover a couple different things. There's a lot that we in our household have going on. Prudence is an author. She's also a musician, so she has published albums, and she's got published books. There's another book that's coming out. Depending on when you watch this, it might already be out. It is for sure coming out in February of 2023.
You need to stop giving dates.
No, it's scheduled now. It's scheduled. I don't have the date right on the tip of my head, but and Deep Woods is already out. She's writing another book right now. We have 4 children. 2 of them have successfully completed high school and are out of the house, and that is a huge victory.
Well, one of them isn't out of the house yet, Chris.
Well, I call them out of the house when they can
Yeah,
leave on their own.
Well, old enough to leave. Let's just put
Yeah,
that.
so that's a big success.
We actually don't believe in kicking our children out
No.
on their...
No. I mean, if they don't do the dishes, then out. No, but so we own a few different businesses. We are in full-time ministry. We produce programs like that. Like we're doing all kinds of crazy things. So I thought we could tackle some of that stuff in this episode and talk about what is it like to be an author? What is it like to, do these things? And try to do
but
them all
I'm not
at
the
once.
only one that's writing stuff. You're also writing stuff.
Yes, I am an
So
author.
maybe you should
You're an
talk
author.
about how you're getting the job done.
Yeah, let's talk about all of it. I wanted to remind you also, Prudence, that if you want to look directly into the eye of the listener, that's your camera right there. So that's the one. If you want to say something
This
convicting,
whole time I was looking at the wrong people.
you can look at that one, but don't look at that one. That's mine.
Okay.
Over there. Yeah, so let's just to kick things off. This is your first book. It's called Deep Woods. We did one where we talked more specifically about this. This is a supernatural thriller, and you wrote this. When did you write this? 27 years ago?
It's a long time ago.
2018. Whoa, 4 years ago? Wow, girl.
Almost 5.
So you wrote this 4 or 5 years ago, and this was your first novel, but you've been writing in journals and blog posts and stuff for years and years and years. Tell us a little bit about this, just at a high level, so we can get a feel for it, because a lot of people have never
Okay,
heard
but
of
what's
this
your
book.
question specifically?
No, just tell us about this book and why you wrote it. What is Deep Woods, and why did you write it?
Deep Woods is a lot of vitamins in a cookie.
I love that. Vitamins in a cookie.
Yeah, so in my understanding of the dark side of supernatural and journey through a lot of that revelation of just what's real, what can happen, what is in that sphere that so many movies portray as, just fantasy. Well, people believe that they're fantasy.
Right.
Unless you're actually involved with this stuff, then you actually know that it actually works. So I think that there's a great majority of us out there that believe that a lot of the things that we see in movies that happens, like in horror films and things like that, we think that it's all just a fairy tale, made believe, somebody made it up just for a scare factor. And there's like zillions of like horror books out there too. And people just we get this kind of high almost off of getting scared.
Yeah.
And so that I think is why it drives us humans to watch things like that or read things like that, because it's just it's a safe place to get that thrill.
Yeah.
But, through, I think, my understanding of what actually is true, it was disturbing to me because as a believer, I wasn't aware of that, and it was upsetting because I felt like I had been cheated out of a lot of knowledge for a long time. And
You're talking about like on this awareness
yes,
of the
because
supernatural?
a lot of what is in here has a lot of teachings on what happens within the occult, and just things that I think a lot of us are very familiar with, psychics and Ouija board type stuff. A lot of these little trinkets and things, maybe even voodoo dolls, where people think, oh, those are just a fun joke or whatever, but they're really not.
But you're not saying that you got cheated on that information. You're saying just like that those things are real tools of the enemy.
Yeah,
that was kind of talked
well,
about.
I
but
didn't.
all the rest
I mean,
really wasn't,
you're
right?
kind of told that to just stay away from some of this stuff, but why and what? Why should we? Exactly. What's behind the curtain there? So I really think that demystifying a lot of this stuff is
good.
helpful to a lot of people, because it helps them to see that if there's power on the dark side, then there's so much more power on the side of God.
Yeah.
So,
So this is a story.
So this is a story that was developed because of all the information that I accumulated and wanted to share with people, but couldn't.
And I think we said this, but this is a supernatural thriller.
Yeah,
Right.
it's actual novel. So, and so I found that it was really difficult to talk to other fellow believers about these things and what I was beginning to understand. And, it's not always appropriate to just go around saying this, and this, but fully knowing deep inside myself somewhere that the Lord had designed me to write. And so I had reached close to the age of 40, and there's still not really too much fruit from that. Just knowing that you're supposed to write. And
You're saying you always knew you were supposed to write, but here you were, a few years ago, almost 40, and you hadn't written anything official, is what you're saying.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So, anyways, just an interesting journey, where this was my first adventure in writing an actual novel and story. And truthfully, I don't read a lot of novels.
So tell us what this story is about, just so that people know.
Yeah, this is a story of a young woman in her 20s who is an agnostic, and she moves locations and doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in the devil, nothing. But she rents an apartment from a couple that are very active in the occult. And when things start happening to her in her apartment that she can't explain, then she starts going on to find answers for why that's happening. Who is telling the truth? And these things can't possibly happen. It doesn't make logical sense.
Right.
So that is basically it in a nutshell. It's her journey of uncovering a bunch of rocks that she has never looked under before.
Yeah.
So, there is a gospel message within the book to help people go the right direction.
But in a lot of ways, this is not a churchy book, right?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, there is God mentioned many times over, because it's really a battle, and so she's met with a problem and she has to find a solution.
Yeah, it's good. And then you have another book that's coming out soon called The Sound of Wings, and that's not a sequel to this, but same time period, some of the same characters.
Yeah, they could be read apart. They don't have to be read together. But if you read both books, you'll see some of the same characters within those books. And it's the same location. So, what did you want to know about that?
That's a good question. What kind of question do I have? How was it writing the second book after the first one? Just pure curious. Harder? Easier?
No, it was basically the same, except for up to chapter 13 on the first round got deleted by someone.
We won't talk about that.
So I had to restart
that's a whole podcast,
writing
actually. I do think that is a whole podcast.
What?
You basically wrote the book twice. You've written three
I
books.
did have to rewrite the book. So it's been difficult in that manner because it was, a little bit discouraging to have all of your work disappear like that. So no, I wouldn't say that it was harder, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
Just
Similar.
more hurdles.
Writing it twice was harder,
It's
but
taken
outside of that, it was
it's
the
taken
same.
a lot longer to come to fruition in
Yeah.
a tangible format.
Makes sense. So, okay, so you've got these books. You also write declarations. You write allegories. You're writing another book. You write blog posts. So this is kind of a certain kind of creative energy that you have that takes a certain kind of thinking and mode to get in and so forth. You're also a musician. You have several published albums. More are going to be released soon, music albums as well. That's a totally different kind of creativity, right? Does it take the same kind of space? You also make jewelry and other things too. Is it the same kind of space that's required? Like mindset? Like how different are they? How does that work for you? Just these different kinds of creativity.
Well, I don't know. It just kind of is a feeling of like, well, what do you want to do today? As far as the writing goes, I have to be purposeful about it if I am actually building something that's bigger than a blog post.
Yeah.
So that takes special segregation time. And I preferably would like to not be around a lot of people and have a lot of conversations or go out of the house or, unless it's not really an engaging experience.
Right.
When writing stories, because you really have to maintain a flow in your head of characters in a world that all works together and blends together. So when you are socializing with lots of different people, even kids and their problems, or having to do errands and do all the normal things, it's really a contamination in my mind of things that shouldn't be there, because that story doesn't come out as pure as it needs to.
Right. So let's talk about that for a second. So I know some people are kind of like, some people are like, oh, what you need to write a book is you just need 30 minutes a day. Just 30 minutes a day for writing, and then you just, after, 3 months you have a book. So there's probably people in the world where that works, but I think for the most part that's kind of a fallacy, and that's definitely not true for you, right? Like just like wedge it in between a phone call and meeting with someone and homeschooling for 7 minutes, get on there and write 2 pages. Like, does that work?
No.
So what does it take for you? Tell us about your creative process.
With which department?
With writing like a novel.
Well, in a perfect world, it would be, can I just be locked up in my house for a couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks, and just see no one except for maybe very immediate family members, and like, I have it in my mind of this, like, special little room that it has all of my stuff, all my, you know, knowledgeable books, fun books, that sort of thing. And it's just me doing that and producing without contamination.
Just full.
But I don't get
No
that yet.
injecting.
I don't get that yet.
Yeah.
So I think that the Lord...
So when you write these, what do you do now? So you don't have the perfect scenario.
So what we've tried to do is set aside a couple of days a week that is supposed to be, like, what would you call, like, that space where it's like lab, but it's not got any germs, like no germs are allowed to come into it? What kind of a containment space?
Sterile environment, sterilized environment.
Yeah, so that really is
your
what
writing
we
lab.
try to do, and it doesn't always work out that way.
No,
There
it doesn't always
is
work.
dogs scratching on the door. There is kids needing
Kids
something.
also scratch on the door.
There is husbands needing questions on things. There
many husbands
is
do you
all
have?
sorts of friends wanting to, you know, can you go for a walk today? That sort of thing. So I think probably one step, one layer, actually, I haven't really talked to you about this, but is just to turn in my phone.
Yeah.
So somebody is babysitting it and can answer people that text me during that day, so they're not feeling ignored or something.
That's a great idea.
And then if it's something that's really
Confiscate
important,
your phone, Prudence.
you know, he could babysit it or whatever. But that is what I'm supposed to
So
have.
it sounds like your biggest inhibitor is distraction.
Yeah.
So we have like all these children that live with us, and we run these businesses from our house, and like, how do you deal with that?
Well,
Poorly.
I do the best that I can. I do the best that I can,
Yeah.
and what I don't like is producing anything that is only halfway good, at least in my mind, from my perspective.
Yeah.
So it can be very frustrating, because we live such a life where I wear so many hats.
Right.
And, but somehow, you know, the Lord has given me the downloads for, 2 stories so far, with as much as that we do. And I look back at this one and I think, wow, I could have done that probably in 3 weeks had you just left me alone
Yes.
and given me time by myself. And I did absolutely nothing other than this.
You need a better chair though.
Yeah, totally need a better chair.
Before that.
So I just feel like I don't know how I do these
Yeah.
in the lifestyle that we have.
That actually brings me perfectly to the next question. So, how do you hear from the Lord when writing these? Like, how do you say, so there's this thing like, oh, writer's block, but you're like, no, I could have wrote this thing in 2 or 3 weeks if I had uninterrupted space. What's your process, or is there one, or does this just come to you? Does the Lord send you an email and you copy paste? Like, how does it work?
For the base of the 2 stories that have been completed, there is typically one, like a crescendo of the story that I get from that story.
Like a picture in your
A
mind?
very high point, pivotal point in the book that is excruciatingly exciting or something. And that's how it's worked with these 2 other books.
So
I can't say the same
like a scene.
for the next, but
Yeah.
a lot of times I will get a scene or sometimes even just for small pieces of writing even, and that will be overcome with emotion. And then I just build around that.
Right.
And encase that piece into it. So it's kind of almost like a song almost.
Yeah, that's cool.
Where that crescendo high point in the story is really that piece, you have in a song.
Yeah. So,
And
When
I
you-
don't know how it all comes. It just does.
So it's not like you get this big, huge thing download. For these kind of stories, you're getting this kind of crescendo part of the story, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's amazing. Then you kind of ask the Lord, okay, help me fill in the pieces, and you just start writing from the first chapter, right? Mm-hmm. You don't like write the third chapter first or anything weird like that.
Oh, no. Definitely building out your story. Like, I will build a storyline with characters and that sort of thing. So there is some organization that goes into it. But it just naturally just shows up.
So what about, is that the same process for things like blog posts, or there's like some declarations and blog posts and allegories that you've written that are super powerful? Are those different, or is it a similar process? Or are they just, because they're so much smaller, are they just much easier?
Well, with blog posts, you usually have a thought, like one sentence thought or a couple of sentences that is the same type of thing where it's like, okay, I need to explain this point. So here's the point or my feeling or my thought. And now I'm going to build and stack around it to explain to the reader my feelings and thoughts that surround this piece.
Right.
With declarations, it's a little bit different. I think it just kind of is a little bit of a roller coaster and wave, and I haven't really done very many of those
Right.
yet. But I don't know. I just feel like it's like what the Holy Spirit wants me to put down or write or say, and so I do it.
Yeah. So if we talk about, getting inspiration from the Lord and then putting pen to paper, like, what is the barrier? So you said that your biggest barrier seems to be distraction and not having the space or having blocks of uninterrupted time. And when you say blocks of uninterrupted time, I think sometimes people think, oh yeah, if I could just have an hour. You're really talking about ideally a couple of days or even a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. So aside from that uninterrupted time, what are the things that kind of get in the way from you being able to write?
I don't think there is.
So for you, that's the biggest thing?
Well, yeah, it is. I mean, obviously, we all have our emotions and things that we have to deal with, but if you're put into a position where you don't have to manage a bunch of problems, like what's for dinner, or what's for lunch, or who's going to take your kid here, or who's going to pick up your kid from there, like all of these things are just contributors. They're little spoilers, so to speak, in wrecking your thought process and what it is that you need to write.
Yeah, that's super good. That's super valuable. Let's pivot a little bit over to, because there's a lot of things happening in our household. We kind of talked about that. Let's pivot over to the homeschool side. So you were homeschooled, right?
Yep.
Which that makes you a weirdo.
Yep.
Because when you were homeschooled, no one was doing that.
Oh, there were people.
Like all weirdos, right?
Look, I wasn't wearing like the jeans jumper with
You weren't?
rolled up socks and
Listen,
my hair in
when
a
we
bun.
were first married, we went to was it a homeschool convention? Because a homeschool convention, and when I rolled into that place, we'd arrived at a foreign land. I will tell you what, the people, anyways, I don't want to be mean to them, but it was a different culture entirely. So you were homeschooled, trendsetter, like bleeding edge.
I guess.
Good job, to your parents for doing that, which is really pretty cutting edge. It's definitely more popular now, but talk about how we have 4 children. 2 are already out of school and 2 are still in school. Talk about how that process worked with us having businesses and you being an author and writing music and doing all this stuff. Like, how does that all work?
Well, for us, homeschooling doesn't just mean open up an English book or a history book.
Right.
It really is a culmination of life. When we're in a project for one of the businesses, it very well could mean that there's all hands on deck.
And suddenly that becomes part of the homeschool.
It does.
Right?
It does. They're watching, they're listening, they're learning cameras, they're learning how to make a set, they're learning how to package boxes, they're learning how to all these
Yeah, lots of stuff.
little pieces and details that involve business. So they're taking business class all their life.
Yeah.
Really.
Right.
And that is also a part of our job as a teacher, is to include them in this stuff, whether or not they want to.
Yeah. I mean, they always have wanted to so far, but, we
Yeah.
are preparing our hearts for someday when they don't want to help.
Well, yeah, that's definitely a possibility, which we have already surrendered that.
Yeah.
So
Yes. True.
anyway,
Yeah. So, one of the things I think was kind of interesting is I don't know why I had this in my mind, but I just kind of thought that once we figured out homeschool with our oldest, then we're going to have it figured out. It was going to be it was a thing. What I've realized, and it's been even more true as we've gotten older and our kids have gotten older, is that they all have, it's like a unique education plan for everyone. Completely unique. Our oldest, what her schooling is very different than our second oldest. And they're the two most similar, actually. And then from, our two youngest, their schooling plans are very unique and tailored to them. And, talk about that a little bit. Like, how was that? Why do we do it that way? Why don't we have like 6
why
workbooks?
don't you talk about it?
Ask me the questions.
Because you're doing a lot of the schooling in a different type of format.
Yeah, so I think what we
starting
found
out
was, we start off with this idea like, what does school look like? And we kind of have it in our mind. There's the blackboard and a teacher with a pointing stick and she's got a chalk and a math stuff, and we're like, okay, let's just do that at home. And that didn't work for us very well.
Yeah, well, in every season of your kids' ages, you're going to be tackling different things, especially as they turn over new levels of character building and enter into new types of lessons and things.
Yeah, for sure.
So really, in the younger years is really a lot of character building, a lot of teaching.
And
About no, we don't scream.
And things have changed a lot too, right? Like, it's a different world. You look at the way the schools run for the most part, and a lot of homeschooling, and it's about memorizing facts. And I felt very strongly that is actually quite idiotic in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, and I remember just being really frustrated in a lot of cases because you as a homeschooling teacher, you do wear multiple hats, and there is a responsibility on your behalf to make sure that your kids get their lessons done, but then also you spend copious amounts of time just ironing out their little issues with each other or with you, or if somebody's got a problem with lying, or all of these different things that show up.
Theoretically, none of our children ever lied.
But for me,
Pure theory.
I had to constantly remind myself that their hearts and their character building was really the most important thing.
Yeah.
So if we had to spend all afternoon camped out on that, then that
Time
was
well
what
spent.
needed
Yeah.
to happen, not another chapter in a history book. It
Yeah.
was really that portion of themselves and building that foundation in them.
So when we looked at kind of, the things that matter, as adults, you look back, you go, what are the things that really were the game changers, right? So it wasn't a collection of facts and figures. Like, I'm not saying that there isn't some certain facts and figures that people really should know, but we have this, thing now that has like literally the answer to all of that. So it's more like, what do they actually need to learn during school? And we really felt like learning how to learn is more important than memorizing facts. Mathematics, basic mathematics, including how to balance checkbooks and how loans work and things like this, that's like very valuable. History is almost not taught anymore, and when it is taught, it's perverted a lot. But history itself is one of the most important things you could possibly teach. Otherwise, as we all know, history ends up repeating itself. So we want to teach history and things like this. But then outside of that, it is, like you're saying, like how to solve problems, how to interact with other human beings, how to be objective about stuff, and how to work through conflict and things like that end up being far more valuable than whatever, memorizing your
there's also
grammar rules.
another layer, which I think is what you read about why so many children are leaving the church. Is and maybe you can touch on that better than I can.
Well, I need you to continue so you can remind me what I was talking about.
Well, just the fact that if parents are real with their kids about that their parents are engaged with what's happening in our world.
You're talking about the stat with current events and understanding. Yeah.
Yes, so that we are building trust with them, that we actually do know some things.
Yeah. Yep. So that study you're referring, I don't remember the exact numbers, but there's this study that they ran with a lot, like it was a huge number, like 300 or 400 Christian families that they followed till their kids were all out of the house. And they looked at the families, the percentages, and they looked at the statistics of the children that did not stay believers, that left the church, that left the faith. And then they went back through and tracked the behavior of those families. And they looked at all the things, and they found out all the things that you'd think, like, did the family pray together? Did they have a Bible study? Did they go to church on Sunday? All the stuff. And they found that attending church, having quiet time, having a family Bible study, absolutely none of that had any impact at all. Which is crazy, right? Like, all those things are good, but they didn't actually move the needle on those children keeping their faith. The one factor that they found that had an overwhelmingly like 70% impact was whether or not the parents understood and cared about and tried to teach about and tried to learn on their own about the culture of the world around them. So if the parents were like, oh, those guys are idiots, but they couldn't actually explain why they're idiots, or they didn't really understand what those other people were thinking, even if they had opposing views. The children saw that and then basically learned over time they couldn't trust their parents' knowledge, and so therefore they couldn't trust the faith that they were trying to teach them. But if their parent had this overarching understanding or value of understanding others and other cultures, even if they don't believe them, but understanding and learning, then it had a massive impact in the positive on those children keeping their faith. And that's really strange, because we're all programmed to think that what really moves the needle is that our family has a Bible time together every week. But that didn't move the needle. Like, that didn't save the faith. So anyways, that's the study you were talking about, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I just think it's interesting, as we kind of have approached this, especially with our two youngest, like, we've completely changed the approach to homeschooling. They are now working with me a few days of the week, learning real business skills, kind of like this like apprentice approach kind of thing, and they still have to do math and history and things that are super valuable, very important. But at the end of the day, they're learning how to work with people. They're learning how to work with adults. They're learning how to work with their peers and actually becoming part of a team, producing something that actually has value in the real world. Understanding, learning that, hey, if I don't do this well, it's not going to have value in the real world. That's super valuable lessons that a lot of people don't learn until they're getting some part-time job while they're in college. So we're trying to put that into them when they're really young so that they can be leaders, in kind of amazing ways.
Well, I asked about four high schoolers. They were about junior, seniors, and they were in the public school system. And I asked them, what is the thing that the schools are missing in teaching you? And they're like, well, anything about life.
And they were still in school, right?
Yeah, they're still in school. Anything about life. We teach us to change a tire, teach us about money, teach us about this. And anyways, it was just interesting.
It's interesting they already recognize that, actually.
Yeah.
It's good.
But it does take some tag teaming, because sometimes the husband may forget to take his son with him when he's changing out a tire. Let's do these things together, because now it's wood shop time, or it's auto shop time, or for me it's like, yes, I do want my child's help, but also I'm teaching them how to do what I do, so that they can fish for themselves. So when I'm gone out of the house, I can say, hey, you're going to do this, 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 and this, and it's going to be ready, because not only are they learning how to do this stuff, but they're also helping our in-house community.
And what's amazing about that too is that, I wouldn't say it's amazing. I'm going to completely change that. What's important about that is that a lot of times you don't really want to do it. Like taking, your son with you to do the tire or whatever, like it might actually be harder and take more time than just doing it by yourself. But you got to force yourself. At least for me, I have to force myself to do that sometimes, because it's not about just getting it done fast. Like, what's the fastest? Well, I just change this tire by myself. Like, it's much more time and resource intensive to spend the time to teach them how to do it.
Oh, yes, it is.
But if you don't take that time,
with, all their chores.
Oh my goodness! Without taking that time and effort, though, they won't even have an opportunity to learn that. So it's like really super important. Even though for a high driver like me, sometimes it's really frustrating. Like, actually, I'm just going to go out there while no one's around, no one's bothering me, do it super fast on my own. That is not always. That's usually easier, but that doesn't help anything long term.
No, but that's why we have to work together on these things. I mean, it just is.
So one of the things I want to transition the last 10 minutes or so, but one of the things that I think happens when you and I talk to other people is sometimes they'll say, wow, like, how do you guys do all this? Like, that's amazing. You must have superpowers or something, because we do a lot of things. I guess the first thing I would say is, we do a lot of things and we try to do them well, but it's not always perfect. Like, we have really done a lot of things not amazing and had to pay very steep prices for doing things wrong, making mistakes and stuff like that. So, it's not just like, it doesn't just all happen. But what I would say is, like, we want to be able to encourage people that there's a lot more that they can actually do that they've been called to than I think they realize. Because I believe personally that the Lord has created every single person with a purpose and an assignment, and he did it with a plan in mind. He made us for a reason, which is super amazing. So, but if that's true, right, then the enemy wants to make sure we don't do that plan. Like, he wants to thwart the Lord's plan for us. And so I feel like in our culture today, in the United States or in Western culture, the normal way of doing that is with distraction. So it's just like when you're saying, hey, what stops me from writing my book? It's distraction. It's like, well, what stops the average person from doing what they're called to do? It's distraction. So I guess as we're kind of wrapping this up, Prudence, like, what is your advice to people to recognize when a distraction is kind of taking their eye off the ball, or when they feel like, I could never do that? Like, people have told you that, that's so cool, I could never do that. What's your advice to them? Do you have any advice to them?
Well, I think that ultimately we're all making the choice to spend our time in the spots that we spend our time in. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we tell ourselves, oh, we have to do this, we have to do this. Well, that may be true, but you're still making the choice. You're still saying, I have to do this. Mm-hmm. There's no one else that can do this except for me. I have to. Or
there were some choices that you made that led up to you having to do that.
Yeah. We're all making the choice. And I think that the fear of failure stops a lot of us from investing into that voice inside us that says, go this direction, or try this, or pick up this, or something like that. We aren't in tune with ourselves a lot of times enough to be aware that that's really something that's been built into us, mm-hmm. and that needs to be massaged out, so to speak. Mm. And you don't get that if you're constantly squelching the voice inside your head.
Right.
Where you think it's just, some fleeting thing, but really it's something that you were born to do, and you just have been telling it to shut up because you don't feel like you would be good at it.
Yeah.
It's foreign. You don't want to explore it because you're afraid of failure. Well, what if? Yeah. What if? And that excuse just keeps getting delivered over and over and over by the devil, because he doesn't want you to bloom.
Yeah.
In the space that you were supposed to. So.
What about when well-meaning friends say, no, you don't try that. That'll never work. That's harder than you think. Oh my goodness, you don't want to, and they kind of discourage you from doing something you're called to. Like I know a lot of people feel like, I think I'm supposed to write a book, but then they just never do. Their whole life, they never write it. And a lot of times that can come because people are saying, oh, that's a lot harder than you think. And it is very hard. I'm not saying it's not hard, but what's your advice to them when they've got the negative Nellies, as it were?
They just need to...
Job's buddies.
We all just need to realize that we're making that choice. We're making the choice to listen to the naysayers. Mm. How many people and things, or how many, projects wouldn't have moved forward had people just listened to the naysayers constantly?
Yeah.
There is a point where you need to hear some advice.
Right.
But
so you got to be wise, but
things don't happen without risk.
So can I get you to record that again so I can play it back
listen,
for you?
You already know, Chris, that I'm preaching to myself when I say that.
Yeah, I'm going to give you the cheer.
I hate taking risk. I hate it.
Yeah, that's true. I think too, it's interesting. So we had this gentleman named Ed Rush. He's an F-18 fighter pilot. He came to Eagle Mountain and did a couple of events and partnered with us. And in those events, he kind of talked through lies that we believe that prevent us from doing something. So he did this activity. And he said, okay, what I want you to do is pray for a few minutes, and I want you to write down the lies that are preventing you from doing something, whatever it is you feel like you're called to do. So everybody does it on their own, and the lights get dim, and they play music, and they start writing down lies. So then that activity's over, and he goes, okay, I'm going to call on some people. And he said, okay, you. And this person raises their hand. Okay, Susie Smith. So Susie raises her hand and says, well, what's the first lie you wrote down? And Susie says, well, I wrote down that I'm not qualified or good enough. And he says, okay, stop right there. I want everybody in the room that wrote that exact same thing down, that I'm not good enough or qualified, to raise their hand. And it was like, 70% of the room raised their hand. So like, this is a very common lie that the enemy is telling us, that we're not good enough to do the things that we're called to do. So as we wrap this up, I just, Prudence is someone that's written a couple books and has published music before. And, even from myself that's done the TV stuff, what do we say to somebody that feels like they're not good enough?
I think that you need to just stop it. Just stop it.
Don't be a shubbering, flap-eared.
One thing that we all need to remember is that when we don't head down the road of what God's called us to do, we're actually being very selfish.
Oh, wow.
Very
That's
selfish.
Interesting. What do you mean by that?
I mean, like, we're kowtowing to the fear that we're going to fail and not going into that direction specifically because we have this fear. And we want to coddle that fear. We want to keep it safe.
Yeah.
We don't want... But what the world needs from us is that very thing.
Wow.
So
that's good.
What happens if I say, you know what, no, I'm not writing this book, God, because I'm scared that it's just going to be a flop and it's going to be a fat waste of time.
Right.
Then I don't write it.
Right.
What if somebody gets saved from this book?
That's right. That's right.
It isn't my responsibility to decide what happens with that gift, but it is my responsibility to give back to the world what God has given me. So that is why I homeschool my kids. It isn't because I love it.
Right.
Because I actually don't love it. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, it'd be much easier to put my kids in a school where somebody else does that job.
Right. Right.
But I am feeling like the Lord wants us to protect them from certain things, certain people, certain lessons, stuff, and it's hard work. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to do it because maybe that's exactly what these kids need to be the very best for the world.
So I guess what I'm hearing from you and kind of what I would just echo is, well, first of all, you need to make sure that you are in tune and thinking through what it is the Lord's called you to. But when you know that, then you need to just do it. And you need to find the resources. You need to find the others that have gone before you, get advice from them. But you need to do it. And remember, if that's what God's called you to do, then the enemy is going to be right there to kind of get sabotage,
every
get
step
you off
of the way.
course, tell you, you know what, just don't worry about that, instead let's watch football and eat pizza. Like, there's just so many things that will try to corrupt. So our encouragement to you is you can probably, almost for sure, accomplish a lot more than you ever thought you could. And the Lord doesn't accidentally produce people that have no gift or talent or anything to offer. So if you're hearing that from the enemy, that you're not qualified, that's a lie. And when you make an agreement with it, you're actually making an agreement with the devil and telling God that he screwed up. So that's pretty serious. So don't do that. Like, take the risk and step forward. And Prudence loves taking risks. She's a big risk taker.
No, I
She's
do
a
not.
bungee jumping,
I do not.
paragliding.
I do not like
adventurer.
taking risk.
So
Not
take it
in
from
my
a
vocabulary.
non-risk taker that the most important thing you can do with these things is take risks, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't like that. But you've had to do that to be able to step into the things that the Lord has for you. And we're just getting started in this in a lot of ways, right? Like, just getting going.
That's right. By the time I'm about to enter the pearly gates, I think there'll be a stack of books to the ceiling.
To the ceiling. Stacked to the ceiling. Any other final thoughts or any last points of encouragement for people as we wrap this up?
I don't know. Let's see here. Don't be a deceptuous, foul-mouthed.
Fleshmonger?
Yeah, fleshmonger.
Don't be a deceptuous. So your final thoughts and advice, Prudence, is to not be a deceptious, foul-mouthed fleshmonger.
Yeah, that's not to be tolerated.
Not to be tolerated. On that, we're going to leave you. Make sure you like, subscribe. You can find more amazing programming on eaglemountain.tv. eaglemountain.tv is where you can find all the past episodes of Together We Build, as well as other incredible content. Go check it out, and we will see you guys on the next one. Thanks.